Upheavals in cultures happen surprisingly and suddenly and almost always from below. And so we could see something happen in a week that none of us could imagine. Bang, it's happening. And we have to have our wits about us and be fleet of foot and ready to add energy to the flows that are unexpected.
Good morning, beautiful people. Let's just take a look around and greet each other. Is this not a seriously epic gathering? We may never see this again, this gathering of mighty natural building change makers. It's quite a special moment to be here. So with your eyes closed, let's take a moment to fully arrive and realize there's over 150 of us who've come on our journeys to this place. Recall your own journey.
After I left my parents' home, I did what most 17-year-olds do. I ran around for a decade, being aimless and trying things out. I hung out in those little sandy villages at the edge of the Sahara with really nice people. The people were always wonderful. And I went to the Andes, and I worked in East Africa and Australia and all over the world. And I ended up in Guatemala in an earthquake. It was a serious enough earthquake that it killed 30,000 people overnight and rendered 1/3 of the people in the country without houses. And in the times that we couldn't be building refugee housing, which was my job, I and the herd of assorted English-speaking volunteers would sit around little campfires and talk about what we were observing happening and how the problems in Guatemala were largely a result of what they were seeing in the US and trying to emulate. People everywhere were wanting to be consumers. And that's why I went to Oregon, to try and stop consumerism as we knew it.
We had an interest in earthen architecture and indigenous building. We're also thinking about house and what it is we really need. What would life be like if you could build your own house and be empowered as an owner-builder? And how could that change your life? We were just young and idealistic and asking lots of questions and said, well, what if some of the alternative building materials? Yanto and I had a need for a cottage.
We didn't have enough personal territory in the 10 by 14 foot ancient cabin that we lived in. The previous owner had just taken his chainsaw and cut it off at knee height. So to see through the windows, you had to sit on the floor. So we decided we needed another cabin.
We were in Wales and got on some bikes to see if we can find some cob cottages. And we did, and we were very excited.
And we said to each other, we probably should build something like this.
One of our family friends, he whipped out a check for 3,000 pounds, I think it was, something like that, and said, be the first to bring this ancient building technology to the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And we said, you gotta be kidding. And so we, with that check in hand, we said, well, we better do something. Michael came to visit and was hoping we could do some permaculture projects. And we said, no, well, we're going to be moving. We're going to be building a small cob cottage, and we're not going to teach permaculture right now, but if you want to join us, feel free. So he jumped right in. We had no teachers, there were no books, so we just started trying something. We just stuck a piece of glass in the cob and sculpted around it and said, this is sculpture. Oh my goodness. We realized it's something that anyone can really learn, and it was so empowering. It felt like a big art therapy project.
And then we started teaching workshops.
We started with a workshop, and we would go to your land and we would help you site and design your building, and then help with the barn raising sort of effect of raising the walls.
So at this point, with the cob still soft, it's still soft enough that we can actually just, some of it, we can just move back. But this is the reason that you always want to be on the side of the wall where you don't want to be trying to add cob over here, because you can't see what you're doing. You can't see if you're following the line that you've already got. So then where it's too hard to push, you can take a saw. Yanto, Linda, and myself started Cob Cottage Company in 1993, and we started teaching workshops, and we were traveling a fair amount, and through the process of traveling and teaching, we got to meet some really interesting characters. We ran into Sunray Kelly. He had a bunch of photographs of his work, and we were amazed.
Well, I was one of the founding fathers of this movement. Like all movements, the future arrives before itself, so to speak. There are all these agents of change in the world who are bringing back a higher state of consciousness. Many minds will be picking up on that same, because it's wanting to birth, and so it's coming into multiple beings in this process to make a movement happen, you know, and so. I kind of get sidetracked. I don't even know what the question was anymore.
Hey, and the key is keep the arms fully extended. You will naturally hit the sole. Hey, you see how that happens? Now front and back of your brain are firing together. Beautiful.
I was actually training full time to be a meditation teacher when a handcrafted natural building fell in my lap, like next door to the academy where I was training in Canada. I explored and I had an epiphany. And I was not prepared. And I thought, I want to be able to build like that. Imagine learning how to build the way nature builds. Imagine learning how to have that skill where you could create no pollution, just beauty, just beauty. And I walked off that building site knowing with a certainty that I was going to do that. And I just started to build this way.
Okay. Thank you. Now mind is sharp. Hey?
We were starting to hear about the straw bale builders and rammed earth builders, and we're all kind of starting at that same time.
We saw a new movement arising. We said, what can we do about this?
There was a lack of information, there was a lack of connection, and there was a real danger of factionalization.
Maybe we should pull together the chief perpetrators, including ourselves, and talk about it.
Yanta said, let's have a colloquium. I said, what's a colloquium? I'd never heard of that. Let's call it something that people know what we're talking about. And Yanta argued for saying what we meant, and colloquium means talking together, and that was what we wanted to do.
I got a communication from Yanto and Michael Smith, and they invited me to a gathering in Oregon.
We didn't own property. I was living on a biodynamic farm, so we asked the owners of the farm if we could invite some friends over. And what came of that was what we called the Alternative Building Colloquium.
"70 people came and stayed for a week.
In a field or something, right?
In a field, with no buildings in it, no running water, no electricity. Yeah, it was very interesting. And it was mid-October. And in our part of Oregon, it was cold.
It was freezing cold. The temperatures at night were sub-freezing. We had no indoor facility. We were cooking out of a little 8-foot by 8-foot plywood shack for 80 people for a week.
What are we going to do? Where are we going to put all these people? So we decided we better build a straw bale Colloquium. So we bought about 500 bales and put them together to enclose ourselves, and that's where we began to share our stories.
I can't even remember quite who I was there. I wish I had a list. But one of the key people who showed up there was Catherine Wannick. I don't even know how that connection happened, but Catherine just knows everybody. And she at that time was traveling quite a lot, documenting straw bale and natural building.
I started off making these little humble videos because high-aid technology had just kind of come out. I found myself traveling here and there in all sorts of places. I called it the Straw Bale Trail. One of the first people I met was Mats Meerman and Judy Knox. Mats was kind of the instigator of the whole straw bale movement.
Woohoo! You know, when I play, I figured people get their 10 cents worth. I'd never heard of straw bale. I'd never heard of it. And I thought, I don't believe that. You know, stacking some straw bales up to make a house. And I thought, but if it's true, you know, what could be easier than teaching somebody to stack one bale on another? So I thought, hey, it's worth a visit. And hadn't been in there more than 10 minutes before I had gotten bitten by the bale bug, and I was incurably infected.
We didn't have the term natural building, so it hadn't been coined yet, so we called it the alternative building colloquium.
It was a wonderful week of eye-opening ideas. Meeting Sundry and his philosophy of utilizing timber in the natural way rather than simply cutting it up into boards, eye-opening for me. There were so many people expressing the quality of health that natural materials provide.
Everybody sharing from their heart and offering, in some cases, decades of hard-won experience for free.
Everybody had a wonderful time. We sent people around to pick up the trash afterwards, and there really wasn't any. And that gave me a hint that these were unusual people.
That was such a rich memory for me because I wasn't alone. I wasn't alone. There was all these other people that had the same inspiration. And I think Yanto and Michael and everybody else there had the same feeling. Wow, hey, it was a family reunion.
It was such a powerful experience that it was clear at the end of that week that that sort of thing needed to continue.
We were evaluating it, you know, as a group, and we said, well, we'll do one next year. Why not? As we were planning the next colloquium, which was 1995, I started thinking about the word alternative, and it just didn't seem like it was appropriate because we are so passionate about this ideas that we thought we want this to be mainstream. We want it to get out there. And so I came up with the term natural building.
And that was the first time that that term, natural building, had been used. So that was called the Natural Building Colloquium.
It was a wonderful event. And for me, describing it, I described it like a vortex.
You know, we're almost like soap bubbles in the bath. We're floating around, and when we run into another one, we glob on. And then it becomes a bigger bubble.
All of a sudden we met at this thing called a colloquium, natural building colloquium. Wow, okay, I think I could fit into that. And so then like met all these incredible people that have been doing, you know, all these different kind of aspects of it. For me, that was the seed for like really expanding out my repertoire and you know, just the idea that, wow, there's a huge palette of things to choose from.
So we brought all these fabulous people together and we all did a little show. That was the beginning of what we call the hybrid building.
Suddenly, everybody that was involved with this started like doing all these other things. And we were about to build a house in the Bahamas. And I was like, how can I do this sustainably on an island that has hardly any resources? They've got lots of sand. I ran into Khaki and Donnie here that were doing earth bag. They had built this earth bag dome.
So we're creating a retaining wall, and we're using a system known as earth bags. And in this particular case, we're filling them with stone and gravel so that it'll drain well. We're just about at the point, as we turn the corner here, that we can start tamping these bags and compacting them and getting them all down to the level that we want to start with.
The drywall stops, and I'm looking at...
And I was like, wow, I could carry empty bags and some barbed wire over there and build my house. You know, fantastic, that's it.
Oh, that would be good.
We were working on an earth bag dome in our backyard in Moab, Utah. It attracted a lot of attention, and we kind of like, wow, other people are interested in this. So we put up flyers, and we said, you know, come learn how to build an earth bag dome with us, you know. So more people came, and then people started to come and say, wow, well, you should take this to the next natural building colloquium. And we're like, what's a colloquium? What's natural building?
Well, where I came from in Taos, you know, natural building was building. It had been ever since people settled there. And so I grew up with adobe. I lived in an adobe house and watched people working with the mud and replastering the church every year. So I think what I've brought is some of the historical and traditional aspects, you know, because it's not a new thing. Let's see, it's all about the materials. This is some dirt that I picked up on the side of the road near here, and this is just a colored clay. I had a Cobb Cottage workshop at my adobe dome in Tres Orejas, and Michael Smith came to teach it. He really liked the finishes I was doing, and he said, wow, this looks better than anything we've been doing. Do you want to come to the colloquium and teach this? It was a wonderful colloquium. You know, people were enthusiastic about learning and trying out so many new things. It was all new. These were the pioneers of natural building.
I was busy drawing all these drawings on paper, and I took these drawings to this builder and I showed him the drawings, and he kind of laughs and he says, you know, you better go buy a hammer because nobody knows how to build this stuff you want to build. You know? And so I took his advice. I went and bought a hammer and I just started doing it, you know.
Does he know about this clothesline here?
Well, yeah.
Catherine was going to have a natural building colloquium, and her septic system wasn't working and kept failing, and I had come up with this way to grow vegetation out of wastewater instead of having the nutrients become pollutants and you have to do something with them before they hit groundwater. We just took them all up in plants. And so they become nutrients and are entered into the hydrologic cycle via the atmosphere rather than via the groundwater. So that got me here. Whoa, my friend! So I fell into it backwards by being interested in how to take care of shit.
The organizing of colloquia has been a spontaneous, collective, subconscious response to needs of people and needs of the planet without any kind of clear conceptual framework for what we were doing.
we were just starting out. We didn't really have a clue where it was going to go. And then it spread like wildfire.
Energy that wants to be released.
I just want to get this whole thing 90 degrees. Then I'll come back and I'll undercut it. I'll start to come back now.
And then you have a less thermal mass, but you increase the insulation capacity.
I'd like to, because we have some new faces, just go around and have everybody say their names.
This feels weird. I don't know. My name's Matt. I'm one of the co-hosts of this workshop, but I'm also an attendee. We're learning just as much as I think everyone else who has attended is doing. It's been a real odyssey.
My name is Renata. I'm from Brazil, but I'm the other co-host, the other half-host of this project. It's good to have everybody back, and it's good to have some new energy also. We're very impressed and very thankful for all the human energy that has gone into, there's so much of the building already. We're already going to move in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After this weekend.
Yeah. Floor wet and all.
I also want to call people's attention to the fact that at every course we're going to put a series of strings in place and leave it, try to not get it all crisscrossy. So like I don't want to do that, preferably I want to do that. And then when we have the bales all the way up, we'll come back and put another piece of bamboo on the outside of the wall, and we're going to tie all these strings really tight. And that'll cinch together the bamboos on each side of the wall and lock all the bales to each other.
When I found this place, something about it spoke to me, so we found ourselves buying this big old lodge in this ghost town in New Mexico. We knew about the history and we found it fascinating, the kind of European history of the silver mines and all the big city that it was. But then if you look deeper into it, they cut down all the big trees and they're pretty much all gone. And that was only a decade of people coming here to extract silver. Well, of course they didn't care about the place. They really came to extract, they came to make their fortune and then go back home. And almost nobody came here to make a home. But of course before that was the home to Apaches. And they lived so lightly on the land that you can hardly even know that they were here.
Okay, we almost filled the bucket. Humankind forever has been living in a very simple way on the earth and not being destructive. This group is interested in just getting back to a more normal way of life that fits in with planetary health.
I think a lot of what people are looking for is not just information about how to build a house, but how to build a life. I hear the term battered around that natural building is a gateway drug or some kind of entrance portal into a different way of inhabiting the planet. You can't really even begin to imagine the potential transformation that awaits. Maybe that's going to scare a lot of people off, right? No, I just want to build a house out of straw. Leave me alone. But it doesn't work that way. Once you start playing with these materials and meeting these people, you're going to realize that that's actually just a teeny little tip of the iceberg into becoming a more healthy human being and part of a healthy social structure.
And I think that mud, like gardening, getting your hands in soil is just so delightful, invigorating, it's connective. To be hugged by somebody with mud on their hands and leave a handprint of mud on your back, that's like magic.
Clay, a tree, a stone, these materials are, for me, they're alive. They're alive. And they draw the best from me. And when I carve a tree into a post that's going to be in a building, who's getting carved?
The best schooling I ever got was the time I spent in the forest with the trees. And I got to do lots of it because I grew up in a forest. And I grew up right where I live. I haven't moved off that property that I grew up on. So you can imagine the incredible, beautiful relationship between that land and myself. It's this mutual loving, that, oh my God. I built stump forts and tree houses and played in the creek and built dams and everything I still do now. So basically I play as a child every day of my life. So these are the living shoes I invented so that I could go into restaurants without them kicking me out.
Oh, I think Sunray's great. He's such a tree man.
Yeah.
He's at home in the trees.
What was he like when you first met him?
Just the same.
Yeah.
He used to love to get up on the top of the tree and make it start swinging back and forth.
About natural building is that there's people here of all ages and all abilities, and they're able to be on a work site and participate Do you want to ride in the wheelbarrow on the way over? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, it's a rocket stove griddle with a barrel oven in it.
For an outdoor kitchen.
For an outdoor kitchen. Yeah. Fleming's from Denmark, and I'm from Oregon, and we've been in touch by email. We know each other from a couple of years ago from doing a project together, and I think we're kindred souls in our just willingness to experiment. It's a creative project. It's a new pattern.
I'm a skilled mason. I was teacher in the architect school. I also started to restore historical buildings. So I started with the Iron Age. And you can be sure it was natural. If it was an open space, we could insulate with straw clay around. But in this case, where we are upon this side, we will probably get some perlite.
So this is not a design that you usually do? This is
No.
Yes, well, this
Yeah, it's just that. Both of us work professionally, and we need to nail it when we're doing it at someone else's place. But this is the kind of space that allows for innovation and kind of cross-pollination and stuff like that.
This movement is more about self-sufficiency, and a family can go out there to their land, and hopefully in a community where you have neighbors to help too, and put together what they need and create a situation that takes care of itself, you know, that catches water and waters the garden, and the waste goes into a Watson wick, and everything gets recycled, and you have a big compost heap, and everything, riches just grow before your eyes. And so it's about the lifestyle more than the buildings. They're just a means to an end.
I was really looking for what am I so impassioned by that I could really give myself to. And it was when I heard of natural building that I thought, like, really this like light bulb went off. And then when I actually got into it, it was, I mean, there was no turning back. I haven't seen anything that surpasses natural building as far as its capacity to create community to happen and a deep sense of empowerment. So people who come to it for the very first time, who leave within days, realizing that they can not only create their own house, but that also the implications of what that means. It also means that we don't have to noose ourselves to a 30-year mortgage. And if you don't have to do that, what else is possible?
You open the door, she enters, you usher her, him. Come. So you're ushering this way.
Come, please. We have much to discuss. Madam
so-and-so. Come, enter, pause, allow him to usher you. So come in, and then you just come right in. Come.
We were making a movie.
We were making a movie called Honey's House, and part of our movie included this earth bag dome.
And so we started building this dome in our backyard.
So we'd know how to budget it. And to fortify the claims that our heroine makes in the story as to whether this really was something that would be, effective. Because basically we wanted to change the world using a story that was entertaining, and people would go to the movie, watch the story, and go, shit, I want to build one of those.
Trying to incorporate a workshop right into the movie, sort of a infotainment. We figured people learn best when they can laugh and have a good time with it.
Okay. So then we started becoming like the characters that we'd written about in the movie. It's like, well, we wrote the story, and now we're kind of becoming the story. Dun, 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 dun. Secret Service agent speaking into his communication device. So I really do think that you can write your own script. Go off to look for an ashtray. That'll open him, the sheik up.
Since we started Cobb Cottage Company, we trained about 3,000 people in Cobb building. And we asked people who had been through our workshops, what did you get? What was the most important thing you got out of being with us? And there were wonderful responses that made us really question what we were doing. Because of the 13 categories of response, only 3 were about natural building. The other 10, I'll read to you the list. Perception and awareness of the land, the surroundings, the processes, both ecological and social. Sharpening your senses. Watching the earth turn. And how you feel about place. Beauty. What is aesthetics? Are there universal aesthetic principles? Critical awareness of form, color, texture, space, snugness, soundscape, odors, texture, light, etc. Working for the future of all life, not just humans. Creating durable systems, turning problems into assets. Nature as teacher. Releasing human creativity. And above all, less. These are all things that people told us they got out of being in our workshops.
I learned from this young woman of the Potawatomi tribe, most of the words in English are nouns, and a minority are verbs. In the Potawatomi language, most of the words were verbs. So, for example, we might call a river a noun. In Potawatomi, rivering, there isn't a noun, there's this happening.
Did you see the rainbow? It's pretty
Yeah,
good.
it's rainbowing.
Did you make that happen?
Yes, I did make it happen, as a matter of fact. Cool. And let me tell you why. So the rainbow, for my eyes, is the light of the sun being prismatically changed as it bounces back to my eyes. So the rainbow is always in the center of my view. So if you're over there 10 feet away, you're going to see your rainbow, because it happens in our eyes because of the way the light of the sun bounces in. That's why the sun's always on the opposite side, and it really is different for you than it is for me.
That's beautiful. That's nice. It's
Yeah.
nice. I mean, it's not something you usually think of when you see the rainbow, you know?
That's because we think of objects and not verbs. So those birds see their own rainbow.
This bit's actually coming loose.
This all looks good on this side. This side looks nice. This is all looking nice. I mean, just a tiny little bit.
Yeah, right. You're like, welcome to Miami. No, she was like, she was like.
Hello and welcome to the Dirtbag Theater, presenting the Heyoka Players. This is their second run-through of the opening scene of The Right Brain. Our story begins at a secret meeting with the elite members of a secret branch of Monstrano Industries.
Come, please. Madam So-and-so, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Jean Monstrano.
The pleasure's all mine, Madam So-and-so.
I have called this very selective band together to elucidate what I believe has become a great concern for all of us. The rising tide of the cultural, creative movement.
All right. What the hell's a cultural creative?
Cultural creatives are the demise of your empire. A cultural creative is a symptom of the natural evolution of the human brain.
Our greatest responsibility is to be good ancestors. Are we going to get to be ancestors? It's a big question. It's been a really long and evolving process of actually recognizing the parts that were really important if we were going to take these things out of the woods and bring them into wider use. And I had actual building experience, building big, real buildings and dealing with permits and inspections and all of those things. And there really weren't very many people in the early revival who had any of that knowledge.
There are 5 more rows.
Well, that's just what I wanted to hear, man. For $500, I get to come here and eat old tofu and pound bags of dirt.
Yeah. But it's so exposed.
Shit in a bucket.
Were you at the first one?
No, I was at the third one.
Okay.
My first time here was about 18 years ago. Got me all lit up because I was getting really bored with being a structural engineer, but there was this whole world of green building and natural building starting to appear. And I was able to be part of that, and I was, at that time, pretty much the only engineer around. Well, I am a structural engineer and study a lot of architecture, so natural building has gotten me thinking about how do we even get around to building. And, I was kind of fascinated by, there's a bunch of people who were taking traditional indigenous ways of building with straw, with clay, timber framing, and recovering that knowledge and those skills and then bringing them uptown. Not everybody, but some people were interested in modernizing it. Can we improve on this a little bit?
Can we do it legally?
Can we do it legally? And that it wasn't exactly then. David was you were already working on code stuff, and I was quickly drawn into that maelstrom myself. I worked on straw bale codes in the 90s and then we both handed it off to Martin Hammer. Done a bang up job, way better than we could. Yeah. We could sense that there was a whole lot more potential here than just a bunch of people building hand-milled houses in the woods, that there was something that actually could impact all of humanity, had a solution.
The things that have been accepted now in the green building realm, the more mainstream, they all had their origins in illegal building out of this community.
That's better. This feels good. It was so thick before that I didn't think it was going to be easy to saturate the cloth with it. So let's come in here. There's some bales in here that have not been plastered yet. So I've got the plane of my wall established. My preference is not to leave a square corner because it's vulnerable to chipping. And so it's a better idea. This is called a bull nose, which I guess refers to the shape of the nose of a bull. So that kind of gentle curve is going to be a lot more durable over time compared to a sharper corner. And it's still effectively, like you still effectively have a flat surface up here and a flat surface down here. So now, after 20 years of consolidating information and developing an understanding of what natural building is and what it can be, now where I see the conversations going are how do we use this knowledge that we now feel secure in to really address large-scale issues?
Now we're talking about much broader range of social issues and how we can use natural buildings to pull those things together.
In Detroit, Blair Evans, and he's an executive director of charter schools that are working with kids that have been in trouble and youth in Detroit. So he came to me to do some straw bale projects for students to learn skills and also for them to assess how straw bale might work for their future building projects. And I'm thinking support in terms of design especially, something that they can do indoors, maybe what's appropriate in cold climates that's doable by young people.
I'd be super interested in the prefab piece of that, because we do all our bale walls now flat and tip them up. So for young people, new builders, there's no height stuff. Oh. The whole thing is built on the ground. It's the kind of thing I could show anybody that knows how to build how to do it in a day, and then I don't have any ownership of it. It's just like, okay, great, go. Take it and run.
Sweet.
Yeah,
I like that.
We've become a catalyst for social change. And that's what excites me.
What's our greatest potential is a question I always ask, either as a person or a movement as a whole. And so that's the question that I was holding coming in, and invited whomever else wanted to talk about it. And there are a lot of us who are, I'd say, at the forefront of the natural building work who care passionately about it. It's like, what is our greatest potential and how can we get there?
How do we create that harmonized, thriving life that we know deep in our hearts we can live?
That issue of alignment of purpose is so core. It's something I just stumbled onto early in the codes work, which was when I realized I wanted what they wanted. I don't want people building unsafe buildings. That alignment of purpose was core. It changed me. It changed how I did my work because it stopped being adversarial.
Should we then try to define alignment of purpose that we have between the main constituents here?
Well, I think, what Jan just said, concern for the future of all life on Earth, that's the biggest picture. Everything else is moot, frankly.
Is there a way to use natural building as a lever to prevent the catastrophic collapse of social systems around the world?
First off, know this. There's another 3 billion people expected to show up in the next 15 years. And to house them and to provide the shelter that they need. Imagine all the buildings in the United States, all that square footage, commercial, industrial, residential. We need 3.5 times as much is going to be built in the next 15 years on Earth to house all those people who are coming.
The demand for and the interest in this information is going to increase rapidly. And there are a lot of people here this week who have practical proposals about how to address the biggest problems that exist on the planet using mud and straw and wood.
What we're calling natural building is really low carbon building. This is very much part of the answer for climate change. It's taking all that carbon that the built environment is putting up there right now and reducing it way down to zero, truly zero carbon buildings. So as goofy as it all looks, these people are doing some really important work here. For me, all I get to do is pound bags.
How do people come together in different configurations than the present one You know, it's almost like science fiction. What I see when I go to climate conferences is reductionist thinking. We need to do with less. And nobody buys that, and so there's all this foot dragging and opposition to climate change strategies because nobody wants to do with less. And instead, we need to think about natural building as a climate solution, a viable climate solution. That we can make buildings that store carbon on an annual basis. They suck it out of the atmosphere. And I'm building whole eco-villages to that model that demonstrate net sequestration at 500% levels. So community-based, highly visible, pretty, eye candy in architectural digests and television shows and wherever you can find it in the popular culture as synonymous with climate sequestration, with cool living.
Cheers.
Oh, here's one. There we go.
Here comes the hail.
So passionate.
Growing body of technical knowledge.
Willingness to share what we learn with each other.
Yeah, open source.
And adaptability of the technologies. There's nowhere you can't build naturally.
There are increasing numbers of leaders and aware people within the regulatory realms that are constraining a lot of this stuff. That we actually have, we have some really brilliant allies.
We have moles, is the word.
When I said love, I meant we work for love. The people who are causing the biggest problems don't. They work for money. So in the long run, we have to prevail.
Well, I'm only in it for the money. I'm sure the money's going to show up any day now.
There's financial collapse, resource collapse, population explosion, diminishing quality of life all across the world. And the way we've arranged things is completely unhealthy. And it's creating a culture that's going crazy in so many different directions it's hard to even calculate. And people are starting to feel it, and they're starting to feel it in their gut. So you get preppers, you get the wealthy people thinking about private islands where they can go and escape all this, whatever's coming. All of that kind of paranoia, which makes for it even worse because then you have all these resource wars and you have all this grabbing for stuff. And actually what's happening here in the Black Range Lodge is the exact opposite. It's getting back to a sense of what's real and what's doable and what's really important, which is like being in small groups of people, loving each other and taking care of each other, which is our tribal DNA, you know, it's how we started. Groups of 10, 12, 20 people living off the land.
I was watching the fabric of society carefully for rents. No matter what size the rent in the fabric, I went in and stitched it up. And because I was the only person working on it, all of a sudden it was like, well, tell us what to do, Yanto, you're the world expert. and I wasn't quite ready for that. So be ready for that.
So looking.
That's what I'm feeling. Is like I feel like I have to create my capacity for when everybody comes to me saying, "Wow,
Yeah.
You know, what do I do? And I think all of us, you know, not in the too distant future, are going to be the world experts, and everybody's going to say, holy shit, what now?
Being ready at the right moment to have the right thing to say, this is how niche movements move to mainstream. That they start off as experiments, niches, and maybe there's something wrong with them, but they're going through their vetting process, and they constantly are learning from mistakes. And then at some point, the mainstream culture has a crisis. Some external force suddenly appears and shatters the old way of doing things. And now they're looking through the niche catalog to see which of those things that are in the niches could step up to fill the role and fix the rent in the fabric. And that's when niches become mainstream and there's a sudden shift, a sudden paradigm shift.
90 degrees to this, which is...
I think with something like climate change on the level that it's coming, you are going to have a lot of panicked people. And so for all of us, the work that we're doing and getting to that point of being well practiced and able to step forward calmly when this stuff unfolds is very, very powerful.
To that point, and I want to work underneath everything and then feather it up to here and then to have just a tiny amount of wood.
We need to all start to grow our knowledge base so that we can respond to this and know how to do it. Instead of being helpless, we're building up our knowledge set all the time. We're bringing in new layers and bringing in new people, and we're constantly building this knowledge set up so that we have resources to draw on when there's a need.
We desperately need to get moving now. And it's not just a few of us, all of us need to start paddling in the same direction. There is an urgency. There is an urgency, and everybody here knows it. And it's like, you know, can we pull this off in time?
So in December of 1999, a number of people assembled here at the lodge. We had a meeting, about 15 or 20 people. It was our first discussion of how can we take our knowledge and what we're passionate about and take it into the world and do some good with it. So out of that meeting, Builders Without Borders was born. The first projects happened in Mexico, which were close to home. And we built a house for this builder down there, Jose Luis Rocha, and his family, whose house had burned down. And here he is, you know, with the more or less finished house. We also worked in the Navajo reservation, building this straw bale hogan, again with a sort of a pallet truss system there. And Joe Kennedy, he did this work in South Africa with earth bags. So over the years, a number of projects like this. It began this organization that is still rather small today, but it's evolved into a network. After the earthquakes in Pakistan and Haiti, members of our network responded with seismically appropriate straw bale designs. And now there's been a big earthquake in Nepal, and we're looking to respond there.
After the devastating earthquake in Nepal, millions of houses have been damaged. I was looking for some kind of appropriate technology that can be applied in Nepal.
I visited Nepal to explore possible projects for Builders Without Borders to help in the sustainable reconstruction work in Nepal.
I hope that we can construct some houses that will be able to demonstrate people in that locality that that model will work better.
We recognize the tremendous amount of know-how and experience that's already in any place. The learning is a two-way street. We always learn from the people that we work with, no matter where a particular project occurs.
We are using the technologies from the experts of Building Without Borders in the Nepali style.
Yeah.
Getting smaller made it harder here.
This also let's discuss how less it should be.
because it's give
This has the same thing in this design?
Yeah, and if you need to let out a little air, it is a possibility just to do so.
Yeah. Also, you can take them both out and you can put fire bricks on the bottom.
Yeah.
Or you can put kiln shelves on either of these so you can do pizzas or bread.
Individually, collectively, we have planted these seeds all over. I think every country in the world has better examples of what a local building response is, what a sensible, intelligent building response is for that bioregion. And that's enormous.
What are you doing? Who's 6 weeks today?
Turn off your computer and go to where people are actually building. And that can be a challenging step, but taking a workshop is a very valuable investment of time and resources.
Build something beautiful, build something small, but just do it.
So many of us know that we need to change the way we're behaving, but we don't know what to do. And the Colloquium and our workshops offer some fingers pointing. And almost everybody changes because that's what they came for. They're ready for it. Because I think it's one of the big things natural building offers people, to be able to realign their whole life to something they can be proud of.
Who are these cultured candy asses? Who's their leader?
They have no leader.
No leader?
Every one of us is in danger of becoming a cultural creative.
I've been thinking of myself as like a secret agent lately because I get to talk to you, but then I get to go back to San Diego, put my suit on, I can kind of translate this stuff, and for me, that's like totally fun. I'm just loving this, you know, it's like dun 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 dun.
Got your back, bro!
And it's funny because the more normal I make myself, the more radical I can be.
There are mud people in lots of cultures, indigenous cultures, mudheads. And they often are the clowns, or the tricksters.
Natural building attracts attention because it's a public performance. This field has been shown to grow exponentially, autonomously and democratically. From small beginnings 20 years ago, it's become a worldwide movement. The reasons for its success? Techniques are simple. You can learn to build your own home with your own hands in a couple of weeks. Then you can teach that to other people and they can teach others. Natural builders are manifestly having fun. They're inspired partly by the cooperative, friendly, humorous approach. The most unlikely people become aficionados at their first exposure. But who ever fell in love with a concrete block?
This is a block. It's a very rare block that you only find in people's tongues. Yeah, and you have to chisel away in a person's tongue. Yeah.
Natural building is just a way to wake people up to each other, to themselves, and to the, oh my gosh, I live on a planet. Look at all these other beings living here. Holy cow, right? I mean, that's really what we're bringing to the table. And we pretend it's about buildings.
And I'm not this body is not mine. I'm not this mind is not mine. And when we start to begin to see ourselves as something much bigger than this body and much bigger than this mind, then we're really trying to find that true self that transcends the body and lives through death and moves on and never dies. You know, it's that eternal part of ourselves. And I would like to just give people that opportunity to feel that and acknowledge that that's the truth of who they are. Because I'm a gardener. I want to grow humanity. I want to grow humanity into a really beautiful, life form. And there's just a lot of passion in that.
There was a period there where it was kind of scary because it didn't seem like anybody was picking up on it.
Right.
No younger people were picking up on it. And so this is really reassuring to come here. I feel really good about the future of natural building now. And it's infected the young people.
What do you think about this colloquium?
Awesome.
It's awesome?
Yeah. I like to build.
Yeah. What do you like about building?
I get my hands dirty.
Look at these little rocks rolling down here. Check that. Oh, get that. And we're like those pebbles, being moved by this river of consciousness birthing, and that's all rising up in every soul. And that's what's so glorious about the moment, and the moment of now. This is what's really taking place. And I want you to be courageous soldiers of light out there. I want you to go out and sing your songs of joy.
Everybody is wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody is worrying about where they're going when the whole thing's done. But nobody knows for certain. It's all the same. I'll just let the mystery
be. It isn't about understanding, it's about kind of giving up one way of knowing and falling accidentally into love.
I like the flowers.
Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namaha,
Shivaya Namaha. Shinama Shivaya Namaha. Ha 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 Whenever you're feeling small and insecure, sing that song and it'll kill you.